Welcome to Detective Tales. Tonight, we invite you to step into the shadows of Dunraven Manor, where secrets linger in the corridors, and every whispered word may conceal a deadly truth. Join us as Hercule Poirot unravels a web of betrayal, ambition, and deception in this chilling mystery. Prepare yourself. The game of Little Grey Cells begins now. Shadows over Dunraven Manor, a Hercule Poirot mystery. Chapter 1. Arrival amid the peaks. The Alpine ski resort stood as a monument to opulence, its golden stone walls rising against a backdrop of jagged, snow-draped peaks. Icicles clung to the eaves, catching the fading sunlight in prisms of color, while the vast silence of the mountains enveloped the scene, broken only by the occasional creak of a pine bough bending under its wintry burden. The air was crisp and biting, laced with the scent of frost and wood smoke. The resort itself, a labyrinth of turrets, balconies, and wide windows, promised a haven of warmth and luxury for those wealthy enough to claim it. This was no common retreat. It was a sanctuary for the elite, a place where the privileged came to revel in seclusion. Hercule Poirot, however, had not chosen this destination for its grandeur. His physician had insisted upon rest, citing the fatigue that lingered after a particularly arduous case. The Alpine air, renowned for its restorative qualities, had been prescribed as a tonic. And so here he stood, stepping from the sleek motor car that had borne him up the winding mountain road. His small, precise figure was bundled in a heavy overcoat, his moustache immaculately waxed and gleaming defiantly against the cold. As he surveyed the scene, his sharp green eyes flickered with interest, taking in every detail: the porter's hurried gait, the faint mist of his own breath, the way the snow muffled all sound into a hush. Behind him, George, his ever-loyal valet, directed the handling of their luggage with quiet efficiency. The cases were few, but chosen with exquisite care, a testament to Poirot's fastidious nature. Adjusting his gloves, Poirot gave his moustache a brisk tweak and turned to his companion. "A fine spectacle, George. Do you not agree?" "Most striking, sir," George replied, his tone as steady as his demeanour. "A place of rare beauty." At the grand entrance they were greeted by Monsieur Dupont, the resort manager, a man whose polished exterior, tailored suit, gleaming cufflinks, and smile of practised warmth suggested a lifetime spent catering to the whims of the rich. Yet Poirot noted a fleeting shadow in the man's eyes, a tremor beneath the surface that belied his composure. "Monsieur Poirot, we are honoured to have you among us," Dupont said, extending a gloved hand. "I trust your journey was agreeable." "Quite tolerable, merci," Poirot answered, his tone courteous but reserved. "The mountains, they have a way of commanding one's attention." Dupont's smile tightened ever so slightly. "We strive to offer our guests the utmost in comfort and discretion. Allow me to show you to your suite." They crossed into the lobby, a cavernous space of breathtaking splendor. Chandeliers of cut crystal hung like frozen stars, casting light across a floor of polished marble that gleamed like a still lake. Deep burgundy set the walls, their velvet richness contrasting with the stark white of the snow visible through towering windows. A fire blazed in a hearth large enough to roast an ox, its crackling warmth mingling with the delicate strains of a piano drifting from some hidden recess. Miss Clara, the head stewardess, approached with a brisk nod. Her uniform was impeccable, her auburn hair pinned neatly beneath a cap, and her eyes sharp and assessing. She met Poirot with a flicker of curiosity. "Welcome, Monsieur Poirot. Your suite is ready, and tea will be brought presently." "Merci, mademoiselle," Poirot said, inclining his head. "You are most diligent." As they ascended a grand staircase, Poirot's gaze was drawn to a figure descending. A woman of striking elegance, Her fur-trimmed coat trailed behind her like a cloak. Her dark hair was swept into a shining knot, and her features, though beautiful, bore the weight of some unspoken burden. She paused briefly, her eyes brushing over Poirot with a hint of recognition, before she continued her descent. "Madame Elena Rossi," Dupont whispered, his voice low. "The opera singer. She seeks solitude here before her next performance." Poirot's interest sharpened. Madame Rossi's voice was famed across Europe, a soprano of such power and purity it could move the hardest heart. Yet in that fleeting glance he detected a melancholy, a discord beneath her poised exterior that intrigued him. The suite, when they reached it, was a masterpiece of luxury. Its wide windows framed a panorama of snow-laden peaks, the glass misting faintly at the edges from the contrast of warmth within and cold without. George set to unpacking with his usual precision, while Poirot stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, gazing out at the twilight settling over the mountains. The scene was one of serene perfection. Yet a faint unease stirred within him, an instinct honed by years of unravelling human secrets. A soft knock announced Miss Clara's return, bearing a tray of tea and pastries arranged with meticulous care. "Your tea, Monsieur Poirot. Is there anything else you require?" "No, merci," he replied, though his eyes lingered on her a moment longer. There was a watchfulness about her, a quiet alertness that suggested she saw more than she revealed. "You have anticipated all, mademoiselle." She withdrew with a nod, leaving Poirot to pour his tea. The warmth of the cup seeped into his chilled hands as he inhaled its fragrant steam. The resort was a marvel, every detail designed to soothe and enchant. Yet beneath its polished surface, Poirot sensed a thread of tension, a whisper of something out of place. As dusk deepened, painting the snow in hues of violet and amber, Poirot settled into an armchair by the fire. He had come for rest, but his mind, ever restless, was already sifting through the impressions of the day. Dupont's strained smile, Miss Clara's vigilance, Madame Rossi's shadowed grace. The stage was set, the characters assembled. Though he knew it not, the tranquil retreat was on the brink of a mystery that would summon his keenest faculties. A puzzle of human nature laid bare against the frozen splendor of the Alps. Chapter 2. The Song Silenced. Morning dawned crisp and brilliant over the Alpine resort, the sun gilding the snow with a sheen that dazzled the eye. Inside the grand dining room, warmth and order answered the mountain's austere beauty. At a corner table, Hercule Poirot presided over breakfast like a maestro before his orchestra. A soft-boiled eggshell, unblemished, awaited a precise tap. Toast points stood aligned like soldiers. A pot of tisane sent up delicate tendrils of steam. He adjusted the spoon, scented the cup, and allowed himself a small nod at the symmetry of it all. Around him, the murmur of conversation flowed in cultivated undertones. Silver touched porcelain in a rhythm both discreet and refined. To a casual ear, serenity. To Poirot, harmony with one thread drawn, a little too tight. He lifted his spoon, and a cry cut the room in two. It was sharp, raw, unguarded, a sound that stilled hands in mid-air and broke sentences into silence. The dining doors swung wide, and a young maid stumbled through, cheeks flushed, breath broken into gasps. "Monsieur Dupont," she managed. "It is Madame Rossi." "She is." "She is dead." Shock rippled outward. A glass chimed where it struck a plate. A napkin fell, soundlessly, to the parquet. Poirot set down his spoon with deliberate care and rose. By the doors, Monsieur Dupont had appeared as if conjured polish intact, but colour drained, mouth a disciplined line that could not mask alarm. "What is this, Marie?" he demanded. "Speak plainly." "Outside her chalet," the maid said, swallowing. In the snow. I found her just now. Mon Dieu, Dupont breathed, then turned, already commanding. Miss Clara, keep the guests calm. Fetch Dr. Vogel at once. Of course, monsieur, said Miss Clara, who had come forward with composed efficiency. She faced the room. Ladies and gentlemen, pray remain seated. There is no cause for alarm. Poirot stepped to Dupont's side. Permit me to accompany you, monsieur, he said softly. A second pair of eyes may be of use. Dupont hesitated the space of a heartbeat, then nodded. Your presence is appreciated, Monsieur Poirot. They crossed the lobby at speed, the cold striking like clear glass as they emerged onto the snow-packed paths. Their boots crisped the surface. Breath unwound in pale banners before them. The chalets crouched under white roofs, lanterns faint against the morning blaze. A small cluster of staff and guests waited near the door of Madame Helena Rossi's chalet, faces taut, eyes fixed upon the thing none wished to see. The door stood ajar. A shallow trail of prints led outward to a drift where a figure lay half embraced by the snow. She was on her side, the silk of a crimson robe shocking against the white, dark hair spilled in glossy ropes. Skin pale, lips faintly blue, eyes open to a sky that did not answer. Poirot knelt, brushing away the lace-fine crystals that clung to her cheek. A star extinguished, yes? And yet even in grief the little grey cells began their quiet work. Dr. Vogel arrived at a near-trot medical bag clasped tight. He dropped to his knees with the swiftness of a man practiced in winter emergencies, hands moving with brisk economy. After a short examination he rose, breath lifting in the frigid air. "Hypothermia," he said. She went out insufficiently dressed, became disoriented, and succumbed to the cold. A tragic accident. "You are certain, doctor?" Poirot's voice was mild. "Quite certain," Vogel replied, tone-clipped. "Observe the pallor, the rigidity. Only that robe. The elements do their work swiftly in such temperatures." And yet... Poirot inclined closer, eyes narrowing to a jeweller's focus. On the inside of the wrist he found a mark no larger than the prick of a needle, near invisible beneath a pearl of melted snow. He bent, inhaled with care, and caught it faint, bitter, unmistakable. Almonds. The breath of cyanide. "This mark, doctor," he said, indicating it. "What do you make of it?" Vogel peered, then shrugged with impatient dismissal. A scratch. An insect, perhaps. Nothing of consequence. "In my experience," said Poirot gently, "little is ever nothing." He let his gaze travel outward. Footprints crisscrossed the drift, a confusion of fresh tracks made by the gathering. Beneath them, older impressions softening under a fine powdering of new snow. Evidence. Or noise about the signal? He filed the thought away. Dupont hovered, hands twisting in a gesture that betrayed the careful schooling of his posture. "This is a catastrophe," he murmured. "Madame Rossi was the pride of our season. If the papers—" "Courage, monsieur," Poirot said, touching his arm with quiet gravity. "We shall proceed with discretion. Tell me, when was she last seen alive?" "Last night at dinner," Dupont said. She excused herself early, claiming fatigue. No one saw her afterward. "And her chalet, was it secured?" Dupont spread his hands helpless. "Guests may lock their doors. Staff hold passkeys for service. I cannot say how she left, or whether the door was locked upon her return." Miss Clara had edged nearer, composed as ever, though the colour had thinned in her face. "Mademoiselle," Poirot addressed her, "did you note anything unusual last night, any movement by the chalets?" "No, monsieur," she said. "It was quiet. But I did see Madame Rossi in the lounge before she retired. She was speaking with a gentleman. The light was poor. I could not see who." "A gentleman," Poirot repeated. "Can you describe him?" She made a small apologetic gesture. "It was too dim, and I was at a distance. They seemed intent, perhaps in disagreement, though I heard no raised voices." "Just so," Poirot murmured. "Most curious." He regarded the body once more, the pale wrist with its treacherous whisper of a puncture, the faint bitterness still clinging to silk. There was accident in this, yes. An accident engineered to appear inevitable. George had come up quietly, steady as ever, eyes already taking stock of paths and faces. "Georges," said Poirot, without looking round, "be so kind as to fetch my notebook. Our convalescence, it seems, must wait. He was today." "As you wish, sir," George replied, and withdrew with economical speed. Poirot rose, the snow releasing his knees with a soft crackle. He let his gaze sweep the little crowd. Shock worn openly, curiosity poorly hidden, one or two expressions too carefully arranged. The resort, golden, lavish, intent upon discretion, had become a stage. The first curtain had fallen with a cry. The audience gathered unbidden. Somewhere among them waited the player who had rewritten the script. Poirot dusted a fleck of snow from his glove. "Monsieur Dupont," he said, courteous but firm, "you will have Dr. Vogel attend to the formalities. Meanwhile, I shall make a few small inquiries." Dupont inclined his head, relief and dread commingled. "Anything you require, monsieur." Poirot turned once more to Miss Clara. "Mademoiselle, if you would be so good later, we shall speak about the lounge last night. The hour, the company, any small thing that might seem to you of no account." Her eyes, shrewd, contained, met his. "I will make myself available, monsieur." "Merci." He stepped back, letting the mountains fill his vision. Their crowns burned white under the hard glitter of morning. Their silence was vast, indifferent, eternal. Within that silence, the faintest threads had begun to hum. A puncture almost unseen, a bitter scent too easily dismissed, an unnamed man in a pool of low light, a door perhaps unlocked, perhaps not. No, Madame Elena Rossi had not wandered into the snow to be claimed by cold. Death had been delivered to her swift, invisible, precise. Poirot drew a measured breath, and the little grey cells arranged themselves like pieces upon a board. The song, he thought, has been silenced. But its theme remains, and it will guide us. He inclined his head to the body with a private, grave courtesy, then turned to the work before him, footsteps to weigh, timetables to balance, faces to read as one reads a score. The day had begun in brilliance. It would end with answers, or with the promise of them. And somewhere, within these gilded walls, the murderer had already rehearsed their next line. Chapter 3. Ambition in the Shadows. The library of the Alpine Resort stood as a bastion of warmth against the encroaching chill. Oak-panelled walls rose high, lined with shelves of leather-bound volumes whose spines glowed in the firelight. A hearth blazed with golden flames, their reflections dancing across polished wood, while beyond the windows snow fell in silence, cloaking the peaks in an endless white veil. Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed chair near the hearth, his small, meticulous figure framed by the glow. In his hands, perfectly gloved, he held a cup of hot chocolate, brewed to his precise tastes. The rich aroma mingled with the faint scent of aged paper. He was not idle, he was waiting for a young woman whose name had already surfaced among whispers. "Georges," he said softly to his valet, who stood discreetly by the door, "be so good as to find Mademoiselle Sophia Moretti, and request that she join me here." I believe she's in the lounge. Very good, sir, George replied with his customary calm. He departed noiselessly, leaving Poirot alone with the fire and his thoughts. Poirot's eyes strayed to a shelf heavy with opera scores Verdi, Puccini, Bizet, silent witnesses to the artistry of the woman who now lay dead. Madame Elena Rossi, soprano supreme, silenced not by fatigue or accident, but he was convinced by design. He remembered the tiny puncture mark, the faint, bitter trace of almonds, cyanide, and an aria rehearsed in her final days, its theme, Betrayal. A curious coincidence, was it not? The door opened with a soft creak. Miss Clara ushered in a striking young woman. Sophia Moretti entered with grace, though a tremor betrayed her poise. She was tall, her raven hair falling in soft waves about her shoulders, her eyes dark and luminous. She wore a gown of sapphire blue, simple but elegant, the attire of one who knows her beauty but has not yet claimed a stage of her own. Poirot rose, bowing slightly. "Mademoiselle Moretti, I am Hercule Poirot. Merci for coming to speak with me." She smiled faintly, lips parting and closing as though uncertain. "Of course, monsieur, though I do not know why you would wish to see me." "Pray, be seated." Poirot gestured with delicate courtesy to the chair opposite his own. "It is but a few questions. You were, I understand, the understudy to Madame Rossi." "Yes," she said, lowering herself into the chair. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as though to steady themselves. "It was an honor." She was extraordinary. Poirot's gaze was kind, but his tone pressed gently. "To stand so near to brilliance, it must at times be difficult, n'est-ce pas? To live in the shadow of a star." A shadow flickered across Sophia's face. Her eyes darted to the fire. "I never wished her ill. She taught me so much." Poirot inclined his head. "Naturellement. Tell me, did Madame Rossi speak of her work, of the aria she was rehearsing?" "She kept her preparations private," Sophia admitted after a pause. "But the lyrics they were haunting. A tale of betrayal. A lover's treachery." "Betrayal," Poirot repeated, softly, his eyes glinting. "A most curious theme. Did it trouble her, perhaps? As though the words carried some personal weight?" "I cannot say for certain," Sophia whispered. "She was distracted these past days. Once I saw her reading a letter. It seemed to upset her, but she said nothing." Poirot steepled his fingers. "And on the night of her death, did you see her? Perhaps in the lounge?" Sophia's head jerked up, alarm flashing in her dark eyes. "Yes. Briefly. She was speaking with someone. A man." Poirot's voice was velvet. "Can you describe this man?" I could not see clearly," she confessed, twisting her sleeve. "The light was poor. But I think it may have been Monsieur Luca Peterson, the ski instructor. They seemed intent, perhaps arguing. I heard no raised voices." "Ah, Monsieur Peterson," Poirot murmured. "Most curious." He shifted gently. "Tell me, mademoiselle, had Madame Rossi enemies? Anyone who bore her malice?" Sophia hesitated, lips parting, then closing again. "Not enemies, exactly. But she was demanding. Some found her difficult. There was a critic, I recall, who once wrote a cruel review. She took it hard. His name, Franz Bauer." "Merci, mademoiselle," Poirot said, rising. The interview concluded. Sophia followed, her relief palpable. At the threshold, Poirot asked one final question. "Did you notice anything else? Any hint of fear in Madame Rossi?" Sophia paused, her hand on the knob. She was quieter than usual. more distant. And that letter, it troubled her. Poirot inclined his head gravely. Merci, mademoiselle. That will be all. She slipped out, the door closing behind her. Poirot turned to George, who had returned silently, his presence steady as ever. A nervous young woman, George. Her ambition burns like a flame. But is it the flame that warms, or the flame that consumes? Before George could answer, there came a knock. Monsieur Dupont entered, his polished calm frayed by worry. Monsieur Poirot, forgive me. The guests are uneasy. They fear for their safety. Poirot smiled faintly, his voice calm. Reassure them, monsieur. The truth has a way of restoring order, even in the most delicate of snowflakes. Dupont bowed slightly, visibly comforted, and withdrew. Poirot adjusted his tie with a precise flick, his reflection caught in the glass of the bookcase. Impeccable as always. Yet beneath his calm exterior, his mind was alive with thought. Sophia's unease. The aria of betrayal. The critic's name. The man in the lounge. The mysterious letter. The stage widened. The players revealed their masks. Poirot gazed through the window at the falling snow, at peaks that stood silent and eternal, indifferent witnesses to human folly. Within these gilded halls, a deadly drama had begun its act, and Hercule Poirot would see it through to its final curtain. Chapter 4. The critic's hidden stain. The library of the Alpine resort retained its hushed grandeur as the afternoon waned. Oak panels glowed darkly, the fire in the hearth crackled in even rhythm, and beyond the wide windows the snow fell in a ceaseless curtain, pressing white against the glass. Hercule Poirot stood near the hearth, gloved hands clasped neatly behind his back. Outwardly serene, inwardly alert. The words of Sophia Moretti lingered with him, the critic Franz Bauer, whose sharp pen had once wounded Madame Rossi. Georges, Poirot said softly to his valet, be so good as to ask Monsieur Dupont to arrange a meeting with Herr Bauer. I would speak with him directly. Of course, sir, George replied, and left with unhurried efficiency. Poirot adjusted his tie before the glass-fronted bookcase, observing his own immaculate reflection. The resort glimmered with wealth and luxury, but beneath its surface lay a snarl of motives. And Franz Bauer, the critic, might hold a strand that led to truth. The door opened. Dupont entered, a faint sheen of perspiration upon his polished brow. Monsieur Poirot, he said, voice strained, Herr Bauer is in the lounge. He is not pleased to be summoned, but he will meet you in a private sitting-room. I beg you, be discreet, our reputation hangs by a thread. Poirot smiled faintly. Discretion, monsieur, is my watchword. Lead the way. They traversed a corridor muffled by thick carpet until they reached a small sitting-room. Alpine landscapes in gilded frames adorned the walls. Velvet armchairs faced a modest fire. Poirot took his place, and with a nod dismissed Dupont. Moments later, Franz Bauer entered. A tall man, imposing in presence, silver hair swept back from a high brow. His charcoal suit was tailored to perfection, softened only by a silk cravat at his throat. But his posture carried tension, and behind wire-rimmed spectacles his sharp eyes flickered with disdain. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his tone smooth, edged with impatience, I understand you wish to speak with me. I hope this will be brief. I have work to attend. Poirot rose, inclining his head. I am grateful for your time, Herr Bauer. Please, be seated. It is but a few questions. His N. Is N. Bauer sat opposite, crossing his legs with deliberate care. His hands rested lightly upon the armrests, yet Poirot noted the faint twitch of his fingers, a sign of unease. I cannot imagine what I might contribute, Bauer said. I am here to review a gala, not to meddle in scandal. Poirot's smile was mild, his eyes alert. "But a critic sees much, does he not? Your observations are renowned for their insight. Tell me, what did you think of Madame Ross's artistry?" Bower's lips thinned. "She was a talent once, but her later performances lacked fire. A critic must speak the truth, Monsieur Poirot, even when it stings." "Truth. It is a noble pursuit," Poirot agreed softly. "And Madame Rossi, she took your words to heart, I hear." Bower gave a dismissive shrug, too casual to be convincing. "She was a diva, sensitive, as they all are. Praise or blame both cut deeply in such a world." Poirot leaned slightly forward. "On the night of her death, Herr Bower, you were writing a review, yes?" Bower's tone sharpened. "Indeed. I retired to my room after dinner and worked late on the Milan opera season." "May I see this review?" Poirot asked, as if idly curious. "I am fascinated by how one distills music into words." Bower stiffened. "It is unfinished. I do not share drafts." Poirot's gaze remained mild. "Perhaps your notes, then. It would aid me in establishing the timeline of your evening." Jaw tightening, Bower rose abruptly. "Very well. 0, 5. Come with me." They crossed to his suite. The room reflected its owner, orderly, austere. A desk stood by the window, a neat stack of papers beside a gleaming typewriter. Books lined the shelves, ink and tobacco scented the air. Bower rifled through papers, selecting several sheets. "Here. My notes. Detailed enough, I think." Poirot scanned the pages. Precise handwriting, dates, names, critiques of singers yet to perform in Milan. As Bower turned to replace a sheet, Poirot's eye caught the desk drawer, left slightly ajar. Through the gap gleamed a small vial, liquid pale and luminous. "What is this?" Poirot asked, his voice mild as he reached for it. Bower snatched it back with startling speed. "A trinket from Venice." "A curiosity, nothing more." Poirot's brows arched, interest sharpening. "A curious souvenir indeed. Might I examine it?" "No." Bower's composure cracked, colour rising to his cheeks. "It is private. Respect that." Poirot inclined his head, returning the notes. "As you wish. I shall not press for now." He filed the moment away. The vial. Was it cyanide? Bower's reaction fear, or only irritation? "Thank you for your cooperation, Herr Bower," Poirot said, courteous but firm. As he left, his thoughts raced. Sophia had hinted at a critic. Dupont had whispered of guests restless. And here, in Bower's room, a vial too hastily concealed. The pieces did not yet fit, but the outline was forming. In the lounge, Miss Clara was arranging a vase of winter roses. Poirot approached. "Mademoiselle, did you see Herr Bower on the night of Madame Rossi's death?" "Yes," she said calmly. "Around midnight he left his room, looking agitated. He returned soon after, empty-handed." "Most interesting," Poirot murmured. He stepped to the window, gazing at the snow piling against the glass. The resort's serenity was a mask. Beneath it, coiled bribery, secrets, ambition, and fear. Herr Bower's vial might yet hold the answer. Or it might be a shadow, distracting from the true hand that had struck. "Georges," Poirot said, as his valet rejoined him, "we must proceed with care. The puzzle grows complex, but the pieces they will align in time." "Indeed, sir," George replied, calm as ever. Poirot straightened his coat with a precise tug. The game deepened, the stakes rose, and Hercule Poirot, master of order and truth, was ready for the next move. Chapter 5. A Grudge on the Slopes. The lounge of the Alpine resort glowed with firelight, its warmth spilling across polished wood and velvet furnishings. Beyond the tall windows, snow fell in a relentless veil, softening the jagged peaks into dreamlike silhouettes. Hercule Poirot sat in a small alcove near the hearth, his figure neat and compact, his gloved hands resting lightly upon the chair's arms. Around him, the hum of guests filled the air, soft laughter, the clink of glasses, conversations about skiing, triumphs, and society gossip. Yet his sharp green eyes fixed on one man alone. Luca Peterson, the ski instructor. Tall, athletic, bronzed by the sun of Alpine slopes, he moved with an effortless grace. His smile was quick, practiced, his manner confident. But Poirot observed more the shadows that flickered across his face when he thought himself unobserved, the stiffness in his shoulders, the bitterness that clung like a faint scent. Here was a man whose charm was a cloak, beneath which smouldered a wound deep enough perhaps to fester into hatred. "Georges," Poirot murmured, "be so good as to ask Monsieur Peterson to join me. He lingers near the bar." George inclined his head and glided away. Moments later, Luca Peterson approached, his expression a careful mixture of curiosity and caution. "Monsieur Poirot," he said smoothly, "you wish to speak with me?" "Oui, monsieur," Poirot replied, gesturing to the chair opposite. "Pray sit. A few questions only, regarding Madame Elena Rossi." Peterson lowered himself into the chair, resting his hands on his knees. Poirot noted the brief clench of fingers, the flicker of tension beneath polished manners. "I am not sure what I can tell you," Luca began cautiously. "I barely knew her." "And yet," Poirot said softly, "you were seen arguing with her before her death." "A heated exchange, I'm told." "Can you explain this?" Luca's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. "It was nothing. A disagreement over her lessons. She was demanding." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "I think, monsieur, there is more. Madame Rossi, I believe, played a role in your past, a most significant one." Colour drained from Luca's face. "How do you know that?" he whispered. Poirot's smile was faint, his voice gentle but firm. "Your reaction when her name was spoken betrayed you, and the medical textbook, half hidden among your ski manuals, told its tale. You studied medicine once, did you not?" "I made inquiries." "Madame Rossi was a patron of your school." Luca's shoulders sagged. His voice was low, bitter. "Yes. I was young, foolish. I flattered her, courted her favor. When she discovered my deceit, she had me expelled. She destroyed my career before it began." "And you blamed her," Poirot said, his tone still quiet, but each word keen as a blade. "Yes," Luca admitted. "I blamed her. She might have shown mercy. Instead, she chose to ruin me. I rebuilt myself here, teaching, surviving, but the scar remained." Poirot regarded him with sympathy, though his eyes stayed sharp. "On the night of her death you quarrelled again?" Luca's gaze dropped. "She mocked me. She saw me with guests, and said I was wasting my potential. That I might have been a doctor, instead of merely an instructor. It stung. I lashed out. But I swear, monsieur, I did not kill her." Poirot studied his features, the rawness of remembered pain, the bitterness of a life diverted. "Where were you at the time of her death?" "In my room. Asleep. I have no one to vouch for me, but I did not leave." Poirot tapped a finger against the chair's arm, thoughtful. "I am inclined to believe you, Monsieur Peterson. Your anger is real, yes, but it is not the anger of a killer. It is the grief of a man who mourns what might have been." Luca's eyes widened with relief. "You believe me?" "Yes," Poirot said firmly, But keep this conversation private. The investigation must unfold without warning the true culprit." "Of course," Luca whispered. "Thank you, monsieur. I will not forget this." As Luca withdrew, George slipped silently back to Poirot's side. "A tragic tale, Georges," Poirot murmured. "A grudge old and bitter, yet I sense no malice sharp enough to pierce a life. He is not our man." "Indeed, sir," George replied evenly. "But if not him, then who?" Poirot's eyes glimmered with resolve. "That, my friend, is the question. And the answer is close, though it dances just beyond reach." He rose, smoothing his coat with fastidious precision. His gaze drifted across the room to where Sophia Moretti stood, sapphire gown catching the firelight. Her poise was practiced, but Poirot remembered the tremor in her hands, the unease in her voice. Nearby, Herr Bauer sat stiffly, his silver hair gleaming, his jaw clenched against secrets not yet confessed. Poirot turned to the window, watching snow descend in endless silence. Bauer's bribery, Vogel's debts, Luca's ruined ambition, Sophia's envy, motives tangled like threads in a tapestry, and beneath it all the unmistakable scent of almonds. "The melody grows darker, Georges," Poirot murmured. "But it will yield its pattern. The truth is near." Chapter 6. The Physician's Burden. The infirmary of the Alpine resort stood in stark contrast to its gilded surroundings. Here, luxury gave way to clinical order. Glass-fronted cabinets lined the walls, shelves bearing rows of vials, bandages, and gleaming instruments. A small hearth burned with modest flame, struggling to soften the sharp tang of antiseptic that hung in the air. Dr. Vogel sat behind a sturdy oak desk, spectacles perched low upon his nose. His fingers tapped an uneven rhythm upon a scatter of medical journals. Among them, half hidden, was a crumpled betting slip. Poirot entered, his polished shoes soundless on the floor, his figure compact and precise. He paused, eyes sweeping the room, noting disorder where there should have been none. "Dr. Vogel," he said with a courteous incline of his head, "I hope I do not intrude." The physician rose, his composure faltering for the briefest moment before he forced a smile. "Monsieur Poirot, I did not expect to see you again so soon. To what do I owe this visit?" "A small matter, Doctor," Poirot replied, his tone smooth as velvet. "Merely a few clarifications about Madame Rossi's death. You will indulge me, I trust?" Vogel's smile thinned, his fingers gripping the edge of the desk. "I have told you all I know." "Hypothermia. A tragic but simple end." "And yet," Poirot continued softly, "there are details that trouble me. The puncture mark upon her wrist, the faint scent of almonds. Strange companions for death by cold, n'est-ce pas?" The doctor's jaw clenched, his eyes darting to the snow-laden window. A scratch, nothing more. And this scent, surely imagination. The mountains play tricks, even upon sharp senses. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "My senses, Doctor, are rarely mistaken. Nor is my reason, which has pondered this case most carefully. Tell me, have you no suspicion of foul play? Or is there some reason you cling so stubbornly to accident?" Colour rose in Vogel's cheeks. He drew himself up, voice trembling with indignation. "I am a physician, monsieur, not a detective. I report what I see. Facts, not fantasies. Madame Rossi died of exposure. That is the end of it." Poirot's gaze sharpened, though his voice remained gentle. "Facts? Yes. But facts can be shaped, Doctor. And I have learned you are a man under pressure gambling debts, perhaps? Debts that might make one open to persuasion?" Vogel froze. His breath caught as if struck. How did you learn of such nonsense?" Poirot's smile did not waver. A detective listens, Doctor. Whispers travel swiftly in a place such as this. I hear of a certain creditor, a man not patient. Did he press you to obscure the truth of Madame Rossi's death? The doctor's hands shook. His voice rose in desperation. That is preposterous. I am no puppet. My debts are my affair, nothing to do with her. And yet, Poirot pressed softly, cyanide is not beyond a physician's reach. Did she perhaps stumble upon your troubles? Did she threaten to expose you? Vogel slumped into his chair, shoulders heavy. His voice came low, broken. She knew nothing. But yes, I am in debt. Deeply. A man came to me. A shadow from the valley. He demanded I assist him. I feared for my life, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Assist him how, Doctor? By declaring her death an accident? By ignoring the poison? Vogel's silence was confession enough. His gaze fixed on the floor, fists clenched. Poirot straightened, his thoughts racing. Vogel was no killer, but a tool ensnared, threatened, made to play a part. But by whose hand? Sophia Moretti, hungry with ambition? Bauer, desperate to conceal corruption? Or another shadow yet unseen? Tell me, Doctor, Poirot asked gently, did you see anyone near her chalet that night? The doctor hesitated, then nodded, his voice a whisper. A figure. In the snow. Slender. Quick. A woman, I think. But it was dark, and I dared not linger. Poirot's pulse quickened, though his expression remained calm. 0, 5. A woman. And yet you spoke of it to no one? I was afraid, Vogel confessed. Afraid it was a trick of the night, or worse, that the man who threatened me would learn I had spoken. Poirot inclined his head. Merci, Doctor. You have shed light where there was shadow. Speak of this to no one. The truth must emerge in its own time. He left the infirmary, his mind alive with possibilities. Vogel was compromised, but not guilty. The shadowy man was perhaps no more than an accomplice. And the slender figure in the snow, that detail sang in harmony with Sophia Moretti's nervous hands, with her faltering gaze. In the corridor, George waited with calm patience. A most revealing encounter, George, Poirot murmured. The doctor is ensnared, but the trap's maker remains hidden. We must watch closely, for the snow conceals more than it reveals. Indeed, sir, George replied. Monsieur Dupin approached in haste, worry etched deep in his polished features. Monsieur Poirot, the guests grow anxious. Have you progress? Patience, monsieur, Poirot said with quiet assurance. The pieces align, though the picture is not yet clear. Order will be restored. Dupin nodded, relief tentative, and withdrew. Poirot turned once more to George, his eyes sharp with resolve. Miss Clara may have seen this woman too, and Sophia Moretti must be questioned again. The game deepens, Georges, but Hercule Poirot shall not be outplayed. You can resume. With a precise tug at his coat, he set off down the corridor, the snow outside still falling, silent and unyielding. Within these golden walls, deceit had taken root, but truth would bloom. Chapter 7. The Aria of Betrayal. The library of the Alpine resort stood as a fortress of quiet amid the storm. Its oak-panelled walls rose high, sheltering rows of leather-bound volumes that seemed to hold their breath. The hearth glowed with fire, casting embers light upon gilt frames, while beyond the windows the snow fell thick and ceaseless, piling high against the glass. Within this chamber of hush, Hercule Poirot stood before the fire, his small and immaculate figure outlined by the glow. His gloved hands were clasped behind his back, and his sharp green eyes moved with quiet command. Before him, arranged in a semicircle of chairs, sat those whose lives were now knotted in suspicion. Sophia Moretti, her dark eyes fixed upon her hands, a mask of poise cracking at its edges. Herr Franz Bauer, silver hair catching the firelight, posture rigid, jaw clenched. Luca Peterson, hands restless upon his knees, bitterness carved deep into his sun-bronzed face. And by the door, George, steady and silent as ever. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the mountains outside pressed their silence against the glass, as though nature itself awaited the little Belgian's words. Poirot turned, his voice precise, measured, and calm. "Mes amis, we are gathered to confront a most grave truth. Madame Elena Rossi did not perish through the caprice of nature. She was murdered. A ripple moved through the group. Sophia's fingers tightened. Bauer's mouth thinned. Luca's eyes widened. Poirot raised a hand, commanding silence. "The weapon," he continued, "was a rare toxin. It was delivered through a needle so fine that it left but the whisper of a mark upon her wrist. The faint scent of almonds upon her robe, which I alone detected, betrayed cyanide, a poison swift and merciless." Bauer shifted in his seat, spectacles glinting. Sophia lowered her gaze. Luca sat rigid, breath caught between disbelief and dread. Poirot turned first to Bauer, his tone velvet but unyielding. "You, Herr Bauer, had much to lose. Madame Rossi held proof of your corruption bribes accepted in exchange for softened critiques. Such a scandal would have destroyed you. And in your room I discovered a vial, hidden too hastily. A curious trinket, you said." Bauer flushed, voice snapping. "That vial is nothing. A tonic for my nerves, not cyanide. Yes, she threatened me. But I did not touch her." Poirot inclined his head. "Indeed. Your notes prove you were writing your review that night. And Miss Clara saw you leave your room briefly, but return empty-handed. You feared exposure, Herr Bauer, but desperation did not drive you to murder." Relief, tinged with shame, softened the critic's rigid stance. Poirot turned to Luca Peterson. "And you, Monsieur Peterson? Your life was scarred by Madame Rossi's judgment. She mocked you even on the night of her death, reopening a wound unhealed. Yet I have learned that you retired early to your quarters, seen ascending the stairs while another guest lingered in the lounge below. You could not have returned without being observed. Your bitterness is real, monsieur, but it did not place the fatal needle." Luca exhaled, a rush of relief breaking through years of bitterness. Poirot's eyes swept once more across the semicircle. His tone grew steady, quiet, but edged with finality. "Thus, neither Herr Bauer nor Monsieur Peterson committed this crime, which leaves—" Sophia Moretti froze, her hands stilled in her lap. Her face remained composed, but her eyes flickered with anxiety, a subtle tremor that Poirot noted with precision. "There is one more piece," Poirot continued. "A manuscript, found among Madame Rossi's effects, tucked within the score of the aria she rehearsed. It speaks of betrayal, much like the melody that haunted her final days, and it may hold the key." A faint gasp escaped Sophia before she mastered herself, covering it with a cough. Bauer frowned in puzzlement. Luca glanced between them, uncertain. Poirot allowed the silence to stretch, his little grey cells content with the effect. The seed was planted. Soon the truth would bloom. "For now, mes amis," Poirot concluded, his tone suddenly light, "I bid you good evening. The truth draws near. It will not elude us for long." The group rose, murmurs trailing like smoke. Sophia's step faltered as she turned away. Poirot saw it the crack in her composure. He leaned toward George, his voice a quiet murmur. "The trap is set, Georges. I spoke of a manuscript, a letter, suggesting Madame Rossi feared her understudy's jealousy. It was a lure, and Mademoiselle Moretti betrayed herself at its mention. She will act. And when she does—" George inclined his head. "Indeed, sir." The net tightens. Poirot turned to the window, where the mountains loomed silent, their snowy crowns indifferent to human deceit. The stage was set for the final act, and Hercule Poirot, with patience and precision, would bring down the curtain. Chapter 8. The curtain falls. The library of the Alpine resort was cloaked in expectant silence. The oak-panelled walls and towering shelves of leather-bound volumes seemed to lean inward, listening. A fire glowed in the hearth, its crackle the only sound besides the whisper of snow pressing against the windows. At the centre stood Hercule Poirot, precise and unyielding, his small figure outlined by the amber light. His gloved hands were folded neatly behind his back, his moustache immaculate, his sharp green eyes surveying the assembly. Arrayed before him were those entangled in suspicion. Sophia Moretti, her beauty shadowed by restlessness. Herr Franz Bauer, silver hair, glinting as he sat stiff-backed in his chair. Luca Peterson, hands clenched, bitterness written across his features. Dr. Vogel, spectacles low on his nose, eyes darting with nervous unease. And Monsieur Dupont, the resort manager, whose polished composure was marred by perspiration at his brow. By the door stood George, calm as a sentinel, while Miss Clara lingered near the shelves, her keen gaze missing nothing. Poirot's voice cut the stillness, steady and resonant. "Mes amis, we are gathered here to unmask a murderer, one consumed by ambition, who silenced Madame Elena Rossi with a poison most cunning." A murmur rippled the room. Sophia's fingers clenched in her lap. Bauer's jaw tightened. Luca's breath quickened. Poirot raised a hand, commanding silence. "In our last meeting, I cleared Herr Bauer and Monsieur Peterson. The evidence showed that neither had the means nor the opportunity. But one among us remains, whose mask of innocence now slips." His gaze moved first to Bauer. "You, Herr Bauer, feared Madame Rossi's threat to reveal your bribery. It would have ruined your career. Yet the vial in your possession was no poison but a tonic for your nerves. And your notes and Miss Clara's observation prove you were occupied with your review that night. You are guilty of corruption, Herr Bauer, but not of murder." Relief softened the critic's stern posture, though shame lingered in his eyes. Poirot's eyes shifted to Luca. "Monsieur Peterson, your grudge was deep, born of ruined ambition. She mocked you, even on her final night. Yet you were seen retiring early to your quarters. The porter witnessed your ascent, and the stairs being the only way prove you could not have returned unseen. Your anger is real, monsieur, but it did not wield the fatal needle." Luca exhaled, trembling with the relief of absolution. Poirot's gaze turned, sharp and unwavering, upon Sophia Moretti. "Mademoiselle Moretti," he said softly, "you spoke of the aria. Madame Rossi rehearsed an aria of betrayal. You understood its meaning all too well, for it was you who turned its theme into reality." Her lips parted, her voice a whisper. I do not understand, monsieur." Poirot's tone was gentle but relentless. "You sought what she had: fame, glory, the adoration of the stage. But Madame Rossi stood in your way, and so you obtained a rare poison from Dr. Vogel, exploiting his debts and his fear. You wove a plan delicate as lace and as deadly as the frost outside." He stepped closer, his words unfolding with precision. "Dr. Vogel confessed that a man coerced him into declaring Rossi's death an accident. But he also glimpsed a figure that night, slender, quick, A woman. You, mademoiselle. You visited the infirmary the day before the murder, claiming to seek a sedative. The assistant remembered you, and Dr. Vogel, trembling, gave you more than a sedative. He gave you the poison you desired. Dr. Vogel flinched, his voice breaking. She said it was for sleep. I feared the man who threatened me. I did not know. Poirot silenced him with a raised hand, his gaze fixed on Sophia. You brought Madame Rossi a bouquet of winter roses that night. A gesture of kindness, it seemed. But hidden within the thorns was a needle laced with cyanide. One prick upon her wrist, unseen as she accepted the flowers, was enough. The scent of almonds upon her robe betrayed you. Her body grew cold and still, as though claimed by the mountain frost. Sophia's voice broke into protest. No! You have no proof. Chapter 9. Dawn over Dunraven. The tempest that had raged over St. Kilda's Rock had at last spent its fury, and a tranquil dawn crept across the rugged isle, its pale gold unfastening the mists of an autumn morning. Dunraven Manor rose upon the cliffs, its Gothic silhouette softened by the new light, the ivy clinging to ancient stones as though reluctant to release their secrets. Below, the sea whispered, a subdued echo of the night's great roar. Hercule Poirot stood at the drawing-room window, his diminutive form framed against the expanse beyond, grey eyes fixed upon a horizon now clean and finely drawn. The murder of Lord Archibald Dunraven was solved. Dr. Alistair Campbell, unmasked by threads and figures and the quiet arithmetic of motive, yet in the hush after storm, Poirot felt the weight of truths uncovered, 0, 5, and the sombre dignity of order restored. A soft tread stirred the entrance hall. Mr. Higgins appeared gaunt, steadfast, his face lined by sleepless hours, but calm. Monsieur Poirot, he said, voice steady. The constable has taken Dr. Campbell into custody. The boat from the mainland reached us at first light. Poirot inclined his head. Bon? Justice has begun its work, Monsieur Higgins. The law will take its course. A faint gratitude warmed the butler's eyes. Your clarity has spared this house further darkness, sir. We are in your debt. It is the truth that demands service par moi, Poirot replied gently. But I thank you. When Higgins withdrew, Poirot's gaze fell upon Lady Eleanor Dunraven at the foot of the grand staircase. In black silk and severe elegance, auburn hair pinned with flawless precision, she was a figure carved of frost and resolve. Her emerald eyes met his unyielding, yet shadowed by a quiet resignation. Madame, Poirot said, bowing, you prepare to depart. Her lips curved into a wry line, sharp, but without malice. Indeed, Monsieur Poirot. This house holds nothing for me now, neither solace nor standing. My indiscretions have cost me dear. Poirot studied her steel beneath poise. The future is a canvas yet unpainted, madame. May you find in it the freedom you sought. She inclined her head a salute rather than thanks, and ascended with measured grace, her silhouette dissolving into the upper shadows. Poirot turned toward the dining room. Captain James Sinclair stood there in a quiet stillness, stern features softened by thought. His innocence in murder remained, but his burdens did not lift. Debts that gnawed, pride that wounded, and a connection to Lady Eleanor that now cut more than it comforted. He met Poirot's eye for a heartbeat, then looked away, soldierly composure drawn close as a coat. From the library emerged Miss Clara Fairfax, notebook tucked beneath her arm, youthful vigour tempered by the night's ordeal. She approached with a steadier voice than before. Monsieur Poirot, I have drafted my article for the Antiquarian Review, not of the relic alone, but of this tragedy. Your work, she faltered, colour rising, It is extraordinary." Poirot's smile was small and kind. "Write with care, mademoiselle. The truth is powerful, oui, but it must be wielded with respect for those it touches." "I will," she said, resolve brightening her eyes. "And thank you for saving me." He dismissed the gratitude with a neat wave. "It is my duty, rien de plus. Go now. Let your words illuminate without wounding." By the entrance stood Mr. and Mrs. Worthington, faces drawn by private reckonings. His questionable dealings in antiquities had come to light, unlinked to the murder, yet blackening a faltering trade. Mrs. Beatrice clung to his arm, her habitual tremor gentled by relief. "You will leave this place," Poirot said. Mr. Worthington nodded, voice subdued. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. London calls, and with it a chance to rebuild, if we can." Mrs. Beatrice met Poirot's look, gratitude flickering. "Thank you for your discretion," she whispered. "The truth serves justice." "Not gossip," he answered evenly. "May you find a steadier harbour." They passed through the great door into morning's clean air, their footsteps fading along the gravel sweep. Poirot remained a moment longer, considering the house itself, this grand edifice haunted by secrecy and pride. The Mesopotamian relic lay in the study, its ancient carvings a silent witness to human frailty. It would endure, its value untouched by the passions that had raged around it. Mr. Higgins returned, bearing Poirot's hat and cane, the ritual of departure restoring a sense of the ordinary. "Your boat is ready, sir," he said, "and Dunraven Manor owes you a debt it cannot repay." Poirot settled the hat with fastidious precision. "Non, Monsieur Higgins. Not a debt to me to order. Let this house remember the price of concealed truths." He stepped out into crisp light. The sun rode above the cliffs. The waves lapped the rocks with almost tender insistence. The Rolls-Royce, stranded by the night's caprice, stood mute and magnificent, a monument to chaos now past. Poirot descended to the waiting motorboat, its engine a patient purr. As the craft sheared the glittering water from the island's embrace, 05, he turned for a final look. Dunraven Manor stood etched against the brightening sky, its spires no longer daggers, but sentinels set to keep a chastened peace. The darkness that had shrouded it was lifted, dispelled by threads of evidence and the small, persistent light of reason. Yet Poirot's thoughts, ever precise, rested not on triumph, but on the perennial riddle of the human heart, the wounds that pride will hide, the debts that hunger will incur, and the secrets that smoulder until a storm gives them flame. St. Kilda's Rock dwindled into haze. Poirot faced the open sea, mind already turning to enigmas yet unborn. Behind him a chapter closed. Before him, as ever, lay the promise of another mystery, and the quiet certainty that order would be found again. Poirot's tone remained calm, assured. "The proof lies in the details. The assistant's memory of your visit, the doctor's fear, the roses discarded near her body, their thorns still stained faintly. And the manuscript I spoke of, mademoiselle, it was a trap. A letter I crafted, suggesting Rossi suspected your jealousy. When I revealed it, your fear betrayed you. You sought to retrieve it, but it never existed." Sophia crumpled, her composure shattered. Tears spilled as she whispered, "I only wanted my chance." She had everything. Fame, adoration. I thought if she were gone the stage would be mine. Poirot's voice softened with sorrow. "Ambition, when left unchecked, is itself a poison, mademoiselle. You have destroyed not only her life, but your own." Monsieur Dupont stepped forward, face etched with relief and grief. "Then it is over. The nightmare ends." Poirot inclined his head. "Yes, monsieur. The snow may conceal, but it cannot hide the truth forever." He gazed out at the mountains, silent and eternal, their snowy crowns unmoved by human folly. The resort's opulence had masked deceit and death, but order had been restored. "The curtain falls, Georges," Poirot murmured softly, "and the stage is clear. Let us hope that in its next act ambition chooses a kinder path." With a final triumphant flourish of his moustache, Hercule Poirot closed the case. The faint scent of almonds, the puncture of a needle, the aria of Betrayal, these were the notes of a deadly melody that only his little grey cells could decipher. And now justice had taken its bow.